everyone, Christina here. Welcome to another video in the holiday card series. Today is day 13, lucky 13, and I'm going to be doing quite a bit of stamping today. In the past, I've done some pretty simple cards with just stamping. This one has just stamping, some pattern paper, a little bit of die cutting, and it all comes together easily in the end. Let's get into it. I'm going to be using two different stamp sets from My Favorite Things today at the beginning here. I'll add more later. This first one is called Iconic Christmas. It has lots of little images that you can put together in different arrangements or repeating patterns. And I'm also using Itty Bitty Holiday for part of the sentiment. I'm using 4 different colors of ink from Concord and Ninth. I've got Poppy, Clover, Sea Glass, and Dove. And since I'm going to be stamping all of these little tiny images, kind of repeating, and I want to streamline the process, I'm going to mount each of these small images on acrylic blocks. I've broken out pretty much every acrylic block in my crafting space, and I've got a lot that I've collected over the years, including many that need to be cleaned, like that first one. And I'm mounting all of the images on both sides of the block on opposite sides or opposite corners or ends. And you'll see when I get stamping here what I mean by that. I'm also going to open up all of my ink pads. I'm putting the lids right above the ink pads themselves so that they're easy to put back on later. And I'm stamping on a 5x7 piece of Neenah Classic Crest Solar White 80-pound cardstock. So I'm starting out with this Christmas tree in the color Clover. I've got my stamp chamois nearby. And then I just flipped that block over, and now I'm stamping a different tree. I think that actually may have been a different block, but you get the idea. I've got 2 images on each block. You can see that other one mounted, that tree mounted on the other side of the house stamp. So I'm going to go through and just stamp all these images in kind of a random arrangement, but I do want them to be sort of nestled in next to each other. And I don't want to have any images that are the same color right next to each other. So I'm trying to go around and get different colors in different areas and really trying to mix in all of those colors. I'm going to zoom in a little bit here so you can see more of what's going on. And I've also sped up the video. This is actually 4 times as fast, so it's going to go by pretty quickly. But as you can see, I'm just filling out this area and kind of getting a random pattern of these images. That I didn't even use all of the images on the stamp set. There were probably about, I would say maybe 5 or 6 additional images. There was a smaller deer, a couple other trees maybe, another little glisten, and quite a few other tiny little images that I could have used, but I ran out of acrylic blocks. So you could definitely stamp a large portion of your pattern and then take some of the images off and replace them with ones from the stamp set, kind of get a little mix of all the images. But I just continue to use the same ones over and over again. Some of my favorite images in this were that little circular burst. I think it's so cute. You could combine these if you want and have one of the trees kind of be right below that burst, and it looks like there might be a star on top. You could stamp that little star shape on top of a tree, put that burst shape around it. I think that would look really, really neat as well. So you could create your own little scene with all of these. I think that would look amazing. For me, I kept mine pretty random, kind of making a modern assortment of images, and these are pretty modern colors to be using as well. At this point, I didn't quite know what I wanted to do with this. And I thought, you know what, maybe I'll bring in a circle and I'll cut out all of this pattern into a circle shape. I was starting to think that. I'm like, okay, so kind of fill out the space a little bit more so that it can fill an entire circle. And I decided to just be sure that I have enough stamped. I'm going to grab my nested circles from Simon and pick one that's about the size that I want for my card. I think I picked one that was about 4.5 inches wide. And I realized I needed to stamp quite a bit more on that left side and a little bit more on the right, just to fill out that area so that I could eventually cut it out. So I stamped some more images on the left side, quite a bit actually on the left side, and some on the right. I also added a few to the very bottom just to make sure that I had all of those little corners and edges of the circle filled out. I also considered, what I didn't do, but I considered it, after cutting out, I could ink blend from the edges. And I think that sea glass color would look particularly nice blended in from the edges. Or you could use the dove shape, the dove color. I think that one would be really good as well. In the end, I decided to keep it pretty clean. And after die cutting the circle using my die cutting machine, I decided to not ink blend on top of it at all. And instead, I would grab some pattern paper to go behind it. So the pattern paper I chose is from the Frosted Peppermint 6x6 pad from Die Cuts with a View. And they have some foiled papers in here that are really beautiful. In particular, this one, which has a red foil in the background and pink trees. I thought that would look really great with this more modern stamping pattern that I've created. I cut it down to 5 inches by 5 inches so that my 4-inch circle could go on top. And then for my card base, I cut it to 5.5 by 11. And then I scored it at 5.5 to create a 5.5 by 5.5 inch square card. So I decided to bring in a larger greeting because I thought that smaller greeting from the itty bitty holiday stamp set would be a little too small. So I'm bringing in this one from Pink Fresh, and this is the Perfect Sentiments holiday set, and it's one big stamp. It's going to stamp everything all at once. So I will have some additional greetings cut out and ready to go for future projects. So I'm stamping all of those words in black ink. I'm using VersaFine Onyx Black ink. I like this one in particular because I always have really good results with this black ink. I rarely have to stamp it twice, so I'll be able to stamp this big monster greeting or stamp all in one go. I'm using my Stampin' Bug glider just to make sure I have really good pressure down on all of those images. So I'll lift it up and I have the perfect impression. So now I'm going to take that die, and this is the die that coordinates with the stamp, the big, huge stamp. Again, this is Perfect Sentiments Holiday. And all you have to do is position it over the top of the words, kind of tape it in place, and then run it through your die cutting machine. And I really recommend taking your time, trying to get it positioned just right because it'll be positioned perfectly on the top, but then it won't be at the bottom. And you kind of have to kind of manipulate it and rotate it in order to get the best positioning possible. So even with all of my very meticulous positioning of the die, it was a little bit off, but not so much that I couldn't use all of these greetings. They look really, really great. The one I'm going to be using today says Warmest Wishes, and I'll set that aside here in a minute. I decided to start assembling my card, so I used some Tombow Extreme adhesive to adhere that foiled pattern paper to my card front. And then I'm going to go ahead and adhere the circle. And I'm going to put quite a bit of foam tape on the back of the circle, enough to kind of go from side to side. And I just used some foam tape for that. And I'll position it directly on top of my card base, right in the center. It's going to cover up quite a bit of that really beautiful foiled pattern paper. But if you want it to be more economical, you could use a circular die and cut out the center. Just make sure it's a smaller circle than the one that I used earlier for my stamped paper. So I'm using my little itty bitty mini trimmer from Tonic and Tim Holtz. I'm just cutting down this scrap of black cardstock so that I can put it in my MISTI and stamp one of those small greetings from the My Favorite Things stamp set. I've chosen one that says, "Have a holly jolly Christmas." I thought that would go pretty well with the Warmest Wishes. And I'm putting in my MISTI, and then I'm going to prep my cardstock with an anti-static powder tool because I will be heat embossing this greeting. So I'm swiping that powder tool over the top, applying a very small amount of powder, which will prevent any embossing powder going where I don't want it. I stamped the greeting in Versamark ink, just a very gentle stamping. It's a very small stamp, and I didn't want it to kind of blob out. If you stamp with clear stamp, you know exactly what I mean. If you press a little bit too hard on your stamp, it can really thicken the lines of the stamp, and I didn't want that to happen with such a small, delicate greeting. I used a 6-inch ruler from Lawn Fawn and a craft knife just to trim this out. And then I'm going to adhere everything. I'm putting some very thin strips of foam tape This is from Darice on the back of that greeting. This is the die cut greeting from the Pink Fresh stamp set and dies. And after I have this position, then I'll be able to adhere that black strip right beneath it. And I'm going to be using that same adhesive, that thin foam strip from Darice. So I'll get that in place, and then that finishes the card. You can see as I tip it up in the light that it has really beautiful shine on that foil paper, and the pattern behind the words I think is really, really fun and modern. So that is the finished card. So this card design ended up being 5.5 by 5.5 square. So I think I might actually make a DIY envelope with my envelope punch board for this card. It's a square card, so I might save it and give it to someone in person just because square envelopes do require a little bit of extra postage. It really just depends. Speaking of, my holiday question for you guys today is perfect for all us card makers. How many holiday cards do you make each year, and how many are you sending this year? Are you sending more than you have in the past because of current global health conditions and we can't get together with as many family and friends? Or is it status quo? You're sending the same amount? Let me know down below in the comments. Thanks so much for watching. Just a reminder, I'll be back on Wednesday. Yes, it is the night before Thanksgiving for us in the US. I'll be back here with you live for day 14 of the holiday card series. So put me on in the background. You can listen to me make a card while you're prepping your Thanksgiving meal for the next day or whatever. Just sit back and relax after a long day of work. Join me Wednesday at 6 p.m. Mountain Time for day 14 of the holiday card series.